with the breaking news that came down yesterday, who better to have on the air this morning than COO of Ring of Honor and, dare I say, friend of the show, Joe Koff. Joe, how are you?
Good morning, guys, and good morning to all your listeners. Thank you for having me.
Hey, Joe.
Joe, am I going out on a limb by calling you friend of the show?
Oh, absolutely. I'm a friend, supporter, and I really appreciate all you do for our, for wrestling as an industry, and certainly for Ring of Honor.
Joe, the news comes down. G1 special, you in New Japan at Madison Square Garden in New York, WrestleMania weekend. I mean, first of all, as the COO, I'm sure there was a lot of hard work that went into making this happen, but how are you feeling right now the day after?
It's really a thrill for me, Dave, as you know, because we've had conversations about my initial interest and where I learned to love wrestling was really in that building. So to think that I can go from someone sitting in the stands to someone walking around the stands and seeing all of our fans enjoying our fantastic product, it just thrills me to no end. And I'm really humbled by it, if you want to know the truth, to think that this could really happen to me. So it's exciting.
Joe, how long have you been thinking about trying to put this together and working with New Japan to make it a reality?
Well, we have an ongoing relationship with New Japan and a very strong synergistic relationship. And when the site was announced, obviously, a year ago as to where this big wrestling weekend was going to be, we started thinking about what really are our options for a bigger show. We did 4,000 in Lakeland in a building that was almost 2 hours away from Orlando. We did 6,000 in New Orleans at the UNO, Bayfront Center. Yeah. And we were looking to see, is there the kind of venue that could house a large show, considering the multitude of people that come into that weekend, the amount of fans that know Ring of Honor from that weekend and from our TV and from our shows everywhere. So we started, investigating buildings and looking at certain buildings and certain sizes. And we started with conversations with quite a few different venues. And it did progress, and it progressed to the point that we all know what happened at that point. And then, both parties did what they had to do, and it ended up with a very positive result. And we thank the Garden for giving us that date and allowing us to have our program in that building.
Joe, you mentioned as a fan that building meant a lot to you, and the last 10 years there hasn't been that signature event or moment taking place at the Garden, which is crazy because there was a time every month there was pro wrestling in that building. Do you feel like this show is going to bring Madison Square Garden back to the forefront when you talk about buildings in pro wrestling?
Well, that would be really if that happens, Dave, and God, we hope so, because that means that all the alignments were in place. I think that would be a great byproduct for Madison Square Garden, but that's a lot of pressure on us, and I'm up for that task. If it's a great wrestling show, and it will be a great wrestling show, as all of our shows are, either on that weekend or any weekend that we wrestle, the fact that it's at Madison Square Garden will allow us to talk about the potential largest crowd that's ever seen a Ring of Honor event. So they get the glory, but it's really our job to get that building filled and to present the incredible Ring of Honor / New Japan product that we are known to give. So I'm thankful that they agreed to the date, but now it's really up to us.
Hey, Joe, that's what I get crushed on this show for from the hardcore fans and fans that love wrestling the world over, is I like to talk about the business side of it, because that's a big part of it. Without the business side, you can't run the shows. So now you've got the building, you've got the date. Then how do you guys go about deciding how to price tickets, what you're going to sell inside the arena, how all that goes? Because you're not in the business of losing money. And so that's an important part of this show, and that's got to be some pressure on you as well.
Well, we have that's a good question, and thank you for that. We have some pretty good business fundamentals and disciplines, and there's an element of risk and chance with any kind of major event. But we feel confident that our pricing will be correct. The the building will be scaled properly. The fans are going to get a great experience, and as long as we can deliver on that, and the card is strong enough to get that, I think that we will succeed. This is an interesting show, as you all know, because of the weekend, and there's so many people planning to be in the area that weekend, that a lot of the tickets sold are kind of like card unseen, because they know it's going to be a happening, and they know it's going to be an event, and I really stand by our own successes in this arena, no pun intended, that this will be an amazing show. Couldn't tell you what the card is now, as nobody could, because we know who's going to appear as far as stars that we know will be there. But how they're going to be matched up, how those stories are going to align, it would be impossible to do right now, as you well know, you being in the business and knowing that just can't happen yet.
This is a part of WrestleMania weekend, and there's a lot of events surrounding WrestleMania weekend, and there's probably going to be a big event at Barclays right around the time of your event. Is there a thought of the timing of this show? Are you thinking about having it other than, say a 7:30, 8 o'clock start?
Dave, we really didn't. And it's one of the things, and, we focus on our own business. What goes on beyond us, I have no control of. We can be a little bit strategic, and we can be a little bit of that. My hope for everybody is that all the shows sell out, because with the number of people that will be coming into town, plus the number of people that live in that metropolitan area, plus the number of people in adjacent markets, metropolitan areas that can get to that building or can get to the city within 2 to 3 hours on public transportation. Not everyone can see everyone's show, but there's got to be a good availability of other options for those who don't get into one or don't get into the other. So I think we're going to do our thing. We're going to do our show the way we want to do our show. The competitors are going to do their shows, when they want to do their shows. I would never even look at that as a consideration.
It's like music to my ears, because I just said something very similar to that Dave and the fans got all over me on, Joe, when I was asked that similar question. So I'm glad that you said
what was the reaction? Was the reaction that I should be earlier, or the other show should be earlier, so everybody could see both?
No, my point, when you said we don't focus on what other people are doing, we do what we do best, and that's because that's what I said. I was asked the question, how much do you watch what other people do and react to that? And I said, well, you can't. I said, you have somebody monitor it, but we've got to focus on what we do. And that's exactly what you just said, and I respect that answer, because you've got to be all in on your product and then just monitor what other people do, but you can't react directly off what they're doing all the time.
If you start doing that, if you start believing that and you really start reacting to that, you really become nothing. And
That's right. I've
always felt that way.
You're right.
It doesn't matter who's on someone else's roster or who's on someone else's payroll. And I'm from the television business, and I always tell my advertisers that when people are watching the shows on my stations, we're the number one show with that viewer. That's all I'm concerned about. It doesn't matter what all the other people are watching. That person who's watching, we're number one with that person. Who's ever watching Ring of Honor, we're the number one wrestling promotion at that moment for that Ring of Honor fan.
I respect that.
And I have to satisfy that. That's my customer, not the rest of the people who want to, have commentary or criticize or and I love the praise, by the way, and I'm fine with the criticisms. But our focus is who's watching us at that time, who's attending at that time, who's reading about us at that time. So that's just a philosophy I've always had.
And Joe, don't you think right now, and you and I have talked about the health of the sport outside of the WWE, but now with this, G1 special at Madison Square Garden, us talking about All In taking place September 1st and sold out, and this really is a good time to be a wrestling fan. And don't you feel that this is very similar to probably the 80s when you look at the health of the business and all the options that a fan has?
Absolutely. I think that, I wouldn't call it the golden age, because, the time you're in is the golden age you're in it. But I really believe this, and we've had this conversation, and I say this really just from the hard work that we have done. I really believe the presence of Ring of Honor over the last 2, 3, 4 years, and certainly from 2002, is just a good competitor and a good indie promotion. We have raised the level of what can be done in professional wrestling. And it takes a lot of pieces. And Coach, you probably know this. It's just not one guy. It's just not one event. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a machine. It's a system. As Ray Dalio says in Principles, it's a machine. And the machine has to be working just on all cylinders for there to be a success. But there's no question, Dave, and again, I think the talent, by the way, needs a lot of the praise in this. The talent right now in the industry and the available talent to all the promotions is really top-notch. And because of that, you're getting a really, really good product that's very, 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 very appreciated and very, very supported by fans. And all businesses, when there's competition of some nature, and by the way, I always defer that there's number one and then there's the rest of us. And even though I might be perceived as number two or sharing that honor with New Japan, there's still a big gulf. But there's also a 65-year history there and certainly a 50-year jump on us. But we're reacting differently because we have to react differently. TV isn't just the weekly, wrestling isn't just the weekly TV with some squash matches and some great promos. Wrestling is right now 24/7. It's available on YouTube 24/7. Any comment that you and I make, that if I made something historical or I made a comment about something, people will be Googling it immediately to see if I'm right or wrong. This has changed the dynamics of how we present. And I think it's also forced us to react that way. And I was just reading a book on disruptors, and somebody called me and said, you're really a wrestling disruptor. And I said, I don't know about that. And I said, I don't even know if I should be complimented or not. But there's definitely something changing in the business. And if we are a catalyst and an agent for that change, I would say we're probably part of it. And I'm proud of that.
Joe, speaking of the YouTube, the other day, 3 o'clock in the morning, a notification goes up on my phone. And long story short, I end up staying up for the next hour watching these videos of Cody Rhodes and the Young Bucks talking about the evolution of how All In came to be. And then at the end of the videos, I see ROH is the production behind the really cool, well-done videos. What went into the process of not just partnering with those guys to put on this revolutionary show, but putting your production behind them, which, in my opinion, for somebody that just came in late in the game to see what it was all about, I spent an hour watching these videos that you guys helped put together.
Thanks. Well, we're really lucky, and I think what we're really lucky about more than anything is the fact that those three gentlemen are contracted to me domestically in the United States. And if there's really disruptors in the business, it's really them. And I say that with the most glowing respect for what they've achieved and what they've accomplished through their own social and viral, ways. I just lost what word I was looking for. But when they got that challenge, and I think that challenge is well known, that we couldn't fill a 10,000-seat arena, and I think more pointedly it was to them specifically. They came and said, "We want to do this," and I said, and they said they want to do it on their own, and I said, okay. I said, we support that, and go ahead and do it. And when the time comes for putting on the show itself, we would like to help you put on that production. That's what we do. We put on TV every week. We put on pay-per-views. We have that. These guys are creative. They're very strong creatively. They're going to put on an amazing show, which we all know the story, sold out in 38 minutes. But they're going to be the talent, and they're going to be the creative mind. They still needed that assistance. And I think because of our relationship, current and even just historical, it just made sense for us to be the producing part of that. But that's really what we serve. We serve as the production partner to that. And it's really been thrilling to watch. And to think that, we went from 4,000 in Lakeland to 6,000 in New Orleans. And just this past weekend at UMBC, which is a brand new a building in Baltimore, we had almost 2,500 seeing our Best in the World pay-per-view, which was a terrific show. To go into All In, which is Cody and the Bucks show, at 10,000. I think Madison Square Garden is certainly something that I think is certainly in reach based on the fans, what the fans are expecting and what the fans are willing to go to.
And I think it's even more, Joe, than just the brand of Ring of Honor or the movement. I think it's about the stars as well, because you mentioned the Young Bucks, you mentioned Cody, and then you have to look at, a Marty Scurll, a Kenny King. These are now stars that a lot of these names are getting noticed by the mainstream. Let's face it, Hot Topic, their biggest selling shirts are the Young Bucks, are Cody. So I think you can also take even just the brand of Ring of Honor, but also the stars of wrestlers that you have on your roster right now.
Well, yes, and it's symbiotic because we provide an environment and we provide a creative culture and a collaborative creative culture at that, where creative minds and creative performers and creative athletes can actually excel because they're helping write the story. Not only from a creative standpoint, but from a professional standpoint. And, we've always been an open company to that because that's what we do best. That's who we identified ourselves as being. And we like to be true to our core and continue to just push the progress of that. And I think we've done a good job with that so far. Look, on July 13th, and I hope nobody's suspicious, so I'm going to knock on wood when I say that, This was a big moment yesterday in Ring of Honor, but the bottom line is next Friday and Saturday night we have shows in Nashville and Atlanta, TV taping, and then the next show after that, we go to England. So April 6th is a long way away, and there's going to be a lot of work with New Japan in sharing those stories and creating those stories and seeing if they can carry through over the next set of months to build to this incredible denouement in Madison Square Garden. But, that was yesterday, and today is today, and now we have got to go back to the focus. I mean, I'm thrilled. It'll always be something I'm going to tingle about, but at the end of the day, as you well know, Dave, you have Monday's show that you have to deal with next. Not the April 6th spectacular, live, So we have to be cognizant of that, but it's all part of an evolution of how things should develop. And I think this Madison Square Garden, thank you again to the Garden for agreeing to do the date, really is organic in nature, it's authentic in nature, and it just seems to be the right place at the right time for that moment.
Also, too, Joe, could you get in Bully's ear a little bit? I mean, what the hell's going on with Bully Ray?
He's scary. He's really scary.
I mean, first Cheeseburger, then Flip Gordon. I mean, come on.
Look, I see the way he looks at me sometimes in the arena, and I will tell you, he's scary. He's a scary guy, and he scares me at times. And where is he today, by the way?
He's
not that it's not a pleasure to have you, Coach, because I have followed your various careers through your career, and great admirer of the way you articulate your knowledge, the way you present yourself. It's really nice to meet you and speak with you.
You too. I think thank you for that. I think he's in Australia, right?
Yeah, he's doing a walkabout in Australia.
Yeah, he's doing he's chasing kangaroos.
Got his didgeridoo there with it. Right? Well, he's probably scaring them down there too. So,
real quick, I wanted to ask you this because it's a co-promotion. I know it's 10 months away or whatever it is. How much do you think there will be a cross pollination as far as trying to, if at all, do storylines with talent from there and sending talent over and having their talent come here, all that sort of stuff?
Well, Coach, if you're not, you might be fairly new to Ring of Honor or really getting into Ring of Honor. We've been working with New Japan really on a regular basis.
No, I know that. I'm just saying.
We have that already. What I was alluding to earlier, and I apologize. What I was alluding to earlier is now that we have this date, and now that we know it's a co-branded promotion, it gives us the opportunity creatively to work for the next set of months through both promotions, through both storylines. But
that's what I was asking.
Yes, absolutely, and we thought of that immediately, and I think it was one of the one of the great selling points for both companies. We were out in San Francisco last weekend, just to meet with them to make sure that everything was good, because this has to work for both parties and it has to work equally for both parties. They're such a pleasure to work with, because ideologically they really are like us, or maybe I should say, in deference to them, we are like them. The way their athletes perform, the way their athletes condition, the way they tell their stories, the way there's a total respect inside of their organization to their people, to their fellow wrestlers. It's so reminiscent to me that the first time I saw both promotions working together, you would have thought we'd been together for years and years and years. And I think that comes from that respect for the way the guys act, the way the guys are in the ring, the way the guys are in the outside of the ring. So, like I said, it was almost the next step, the inevitable next step in our evolution.
Joe, I know there's a lot of time between now and what we're going to see on April 6th, but it would be pretty damn cool to see the IWGP Intercontinental Champion Chris Jericho at the Garden wrestling for Ring of Honor and New Japan in that building.
Well, we're going to be wrestling with, maybe not wrestling with, but we'll be with Chris on the cruise, on his Rock and Rager cruise. It's Sea of Honor there, so possibly those discussions can start there. But, we've always been open to that and welcoming to that, if it makes sense. It's got to make sense. You can't just throw in an odd situation that has no context to who you are and what you're doing. And, I've always said this, Dave, and I've always said this. I would welcome any performer that wants to be part of Ring of Honor or be in Ring of Honor, because that shows me that there's honor in what we do.
Awesome. Joe, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. And by the way, I'll be on the cruise, man, so we're going to have a cocktail together.
There you go, Dave. So
that's what friends do, Coach.
That's all you do. That's all you do on those cruises.
They gave Dave a bunk all the way down in the bottom deck.
Oh, that must be next to my room. That's next to my room.
Yeah.
Coach, I'm bringing my wife to that cruise.
Oh, Lord.
She is in for the shock of her life when she steps on that boat in October. The shock of her life. You might be talking about the ex-Mrs. LaGreca when we get to October after that cruise. I don't think there's any
question. It's not a matter of when, it's if. Or not a matter of if, it's when. Oh, my God.
COO of Ring of Honor, Joe Koff. Joe, it's always a pleasure having you on, my friend. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, guys, and have a great weekend.